started with Design for the Digital Revolution, Web3 edition. In this session, you will learn what Web3 is, how it is different to Web1 and Web2, and what opportunities it will open up. First off, I will use the word database a lot today. So I will define what we mean when I talk about a database. A database is simply a place where you can store data. Your personal data, your photos, videos, text, any other form of data. Your computer can be a database. And if you let other people online store data on your computer, it becomes an online database. Any computer with a hard drive can be a database. Any computer with a hard drive and an internet connection can be an online database. In summary, a database equals a place where you can store data. It's not more complicated than that. So what do we mean when we talk about Web1 and Web2 and Web3? When the internet started to emerge in the mid-90s, most websites were called static websites, meaning they were not driven by a database. Which means anytime you wanted to change the information on the website, you had to manually change the code and re-upload it to the website, which was a very slow process. So any online shop, news website, or not even to mention social network, was impossible or very hard to create. Many startups tried, but most failed, which was then the birth of the first .com bubble. Amazon and eBay were the only two internet companies who survived the crash. Arguably, they had figured out databases early on. Then along in the early 2000s came an easy-to-use version of the MySQL database, which was the first online database that was really scalable, usable, and open source, so anyone could use it. Other online databases existed before and also emerged in parallel, but MySQL certainly was the easiest to use and the most popular. In combination with the so-called LAMP stack server, which stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP, anyone with a computer could run an online database and host a so-called dynamic website. Dynamic websites are simply websites driven by a database. These dynamic websites could then change their content without changing the HTML code. You simply update the database in the backend, which then automatically updates the appearance and content of the website. This opened up the door for Web 2.0. But not only website owners and administrators could now easily update their website. Also, users could now upload information to the database and by doing so change the content of the website and create so-called user-generated content, such as blogs and social networks. This really kickstarted the Web 2 revolution. Users-driven websites such as Wikipedia, MySpace, and Twitter emerged, as well as actually usable online shops and user-generated blogs. On top of this, users will start switching from dial-up modems to broadband connection, which then further kickstarted the Web 2 revolution. So what we then had in the mid-2000s was an internet with lots of dynamic websites running on online databases. Each website had their own database, and this is very important to understand for the difference between Web 2 and 3. Every website owner owned their own database, owning all the data on that database. Meaning when you had a news website, you would own the content of the news website, which is obvious. But when you owned a social media website, you had access to all the data the users would post on your website, which no one believed in the early 2000s people would actually do. Literally handing over your personal photos or other personal information and store it on a stranger's database. This was arguably the right instinct if you look at how Facebook and other social media companies have abused our data, as we know now. So the internet as we know it today is really Web 2, with all its pros and cons, and that have, for example, been outlined in the movie The Social Dilemma. And the key to it all is that every website has their own database. Every website owner has access to their data on their database. So how is Web 3 different to Web 2? Instead of Web 2, where every website has their own database, Web3 has one single database that everyone uses. This database is not stored on one computer, but centralized across the internet. So no one person owns that database. Instead, everyone owns it. Everyone can use it, everyone can store data on it, no one person can control it. You can access the database by using so-called smart contracts, which are little pieces of code written in JavaScript. In comparison, in Web2, you would use PHP to access your database. Furthermore, that single database is called a blockchain. The most common blockchain for Web3 is called Ethereum. Ethereum was invented by Vitalik Buterin. So in conclusion, what MySQL did for Web2, smart contracts and the blockchain are doing for Web3. Which leads to the question, what is this good for? The obvious argument is that in Web3, no one can use or abuse your data. Only the person who adds data to the blockchain can control it. So no more abuse and corruption of user data is the first big reason. The second one is trustless transactions. You can make a contract with a second person and that smart contract will be executed as it is written. No one can dishonor the contract since it will be executed automatically. The next argument then is the certification of digital ownership using NFTs. With NFTs, you can certify digital or non-digital ownership incorruptible on the blockchain. This then leads to us to the next big argument. If you can automate contracts, you can automate the whole organizations, which brings us to the invention of the DAO, the Decentralized Autonomous Organization. Basically an organization that runs by itself, where participants can input data, interact with it, but the contracts of that organization are executed as written no matter what. A prime example for a DAO is MakerDAO, an organization that invented the equivalent of the digital dollar, called DAI. Decentralized finance, or DeFi, is then the follow-on argument from that using smart contracts we can build not just a digital dollar, but any other financial product we can think of in trustless, decentralized form, leading us to the finance without banks. Lastly, we have the convergence of everything. Since data for gaming, online shopping, entertainment, social media, communication and collaboration is not stored on a separate database, everything will converge and become one, which is the vision for the so-called metaverse, combining everything that is currently present on the internet into a single experience. So these are some examples of what Web3 is capable of. Let's have a look at a snippet from the TV show Silicon Valley, where Richard describes the benefits of Web3.
All right, let's do an exercise. You've got unlimited time and resources. You can build anything in the world you want with your compression, anything at all. What's it going to be? 3, 2, 1, go.
I don't.
Go, go, go.
You said I have unlimited time.
Now, now, now.
A new internet.
What? Why?
Okay, well, I haven't really thought this through, so... Okay. I own a telescope.
Of course you do.
And I brought it out one night to look at the full moon.
Of course you did.
And I got to thinking, wow, we put a man on the moon using the computing power of a handheld calculator. And then I thought, okay, there's literally millions of times more computing power in my phone, and that's just sitting in my pocket, doing nothing, right? So then I thought, there's, what, billions of phones all around the world with the same computing power, just sitting in people's pockets. So then I thought, what if we use all those phones to build a massive network? And here's the kicker. We use my compression algorithm to make everything small and efficient, to move things around. And if we could do it, we could build a completely decentralized version of our current internet with no firewalls, no tolls, no government regulation, no spying. Information would be totally free in every sense of the word.
You want to build a new internet.
Yes.
Richard, I like it. That I would fund.
In summary, if you only remember one slide from today, it should be this one, that Web3 uses one database instead of many separate databases. I hope you enjoyed this lecture today. Next week, we will look into the details of what an NFT is and what it can be used for. If you have any questions or feedback, please put them in the comments.